Welcome to the Doug and Commish Show, the first Doug and Commish show of the 2010 season. See, here's what we're going to talk about first. We're going to talk about the Shula division.
Yes.
Now, the Shula division, as far as this past week, we had winners, the bean and paper. But one thing that we have to emphasize with the Shula division is the fact that 3 teams were over 100 points. Now, 3 highest scoring teams in the GFO were from the Shula division. And I know there's always been some controversy as far as who's best and this and that, but
towards the end of last season, I think it became unanimous within the GFO that the Shula was, in fact, the most talented division. And it looks like they're off to that kind of hot start again with, like you said, the 100-point performances with 3 out of the 4.
Now, we have to keep in mind that Nips really let them down with the 60-point performance, but, be able to hopefully recover from that. Well, let's talk about the first game, Bean versus Nips. One of the positives that I think came out of it for the Bean was the fact that Wes Welker was healthy. He got hit, but he walked away with 18 points that day. Did you have any more positives for the Bean?
Oh, I did, Dougie. I thought that the way that the Bean went into the nipple and just laid the hammer down and just got a road win.
Yeah.
Well, like we just talked about, the Shula is the most difficult division to win. And the Bean went right in there, got him a win. That's a huge win for the Beans.
Are there any more negatives that maybe you thought that the Nipples had to endure?
Just the fact that he was unprepared for the first game of the season as the champion. He was unprepared for that. And losing that game really puts the Nips in a pinch and a twist.
I see. All right, well, let's move on to the Nappy and paper game. This was a very high-scoring affair, and it really came down to, truthfully, the last play about 1:20 in the morning between the Chargers and the Chiefs. I do know I have spoken with the GM from the paper, and he said he had a little bit of the squirts around that time.
I think anybody involved with that, as far as the players and the fans, there was squirts.
Yeah. Okay, so obviously a huge positive for the paper was Arian Foster's play.
Oh, my
I mean,
word.
I don't think you were expecting that was truly the difference.
The week in the GFO.
Yep. And the Colts couldn't stop him, and
No.
Houston, as a result, just kept doing it the way that they needed to do to get him 46 points.
It's not the way Houston does business normally, but hey, if it works, keep on going. Kubiak finally now officially has himself an RB.
Now, do you think that this is something that we can... What is the average that you think you can expect from Arian Foster?
Based on the rest of his roster, I think that the show would be real happy with 15 to 17 points a week.
I can see that. As far as Nappy, a very good game, but just not enough there.
Yeah.
But my question is, you have Mendenhall and Breston. Breston's a great surprise right there. I don't think he was expecting that many points out of him.
He's a true lift.
True lift. Now with Mendenhall, other than the really long run, a decent day regardless.
It was
that
a
long
decent
run really
day,
helped
but let's not put our eggs in that basket yet. He got half of his fantasy points on one play not in regulation, in overtime. So let's be easy with the Mendenhall talk. But all in all, a very impressive performance for someone who took a lot of ridicule for trading 3 or 4 picks for MJD. It looks like he's found himself some pieces to build around those RBs. That's how you win in this league. Very impressive for the Nappy.
Are you concerned with MJD at all?
No.
No? Okay. All right, well, let's move on to the Lombardi division. We got Trash and Jockey. Obviously, Trash was able to ride the Johnson yet again for another 30-plus points. And really, without Johnson and Dallas Clark, I mean, this is a lot tighter than it shouldn't have been.
The Trash has some issues at wide receiver. He's got Donald Driver, old man trusty. He's good for 10 to 12 a week, which is nice if you have a stud next to him to help. But he doesn't have that. I think that he was thinking that Percy Harvin was going to be that guy, but one catch for 12 yards and a point is not going to get that. Dallas Clark is his best receiver. The Johnson makes up for a lot of issues on that team. If the Johnson goes down, so does Trash.
All right. Now, as far as Jockey, he pulled his tight end at the end of the game, perhaps hoping to get a waiver wire claim, but he didn't even get Brandon Jackson to replace Ryan Grant, who he lost. That's a huge loss for him.
It is a huge loss, and when you look at the rest of his roster, either those guys have to step up or the jockey's going to have to be active. Here in another couple weeks, you can't panic too much because it's just week one. But he's 44 points is not good.
No, and really, then we move. Obviously, Trash was able to win that game. We moved to the White Trash Sasquatch game, and Sass just ran right over White Trash. What happened?
I don't know. I mean, White Trash and the Nipple both. I mean, it's game one, guys.
Yeah. You got to show up.
You got to show up. It's not game 8 where fatigue has set in. Set your roster. Find guys that are going to play. But at least White Trash, he had a couple injuries. The Stafford went down. And Sean Green handed the ball off to the other team a couple times.
I mean, Sean Green,
some issues there.
His running backs, Sean Green and
Turner
had 4 points total on the Sass side of things. If he would have started just the Jets D and Chad Ochocinco, who was a great surprise, he would have been able to beat White Trash this day.
That's embarrassing for the White Trash and a little bit of a streak, a brown streak against the Lombardi.
Now let me ask you something. In a division that is considered the running back division, really without CJ, they don't have anything in this division that stood out to be a running back division.
I mean, it's true. The names are there. It's time for those names to start producing. The names are there. The players are there. But the points next to those all-star RBs didn't happen in week 1.
Let's move on to the Knoll division. We've got the Soldier versus Toilet Town. Soldier walks away with the win. Toilet Town with the loss. Really, the positive for Soldier was the fact that Miles Austin continues his streak.
Man.
He does exactly what he was doing last year around this time and really makes it an acceptable early round pick for the Soldier.
Absolutely. Miles Austin, he can take a slant to the house. He can go deep. He can take that little wide receiver screen bubble play or whatever they do. He's a force to be reckoned with every time he has the ball.
Yep. And are you worried about AP? Only had 10 points. Yeah, you're worried about him?
I'm not worried about him. And they're missing some weapons. Their offensive line is a little aging and hurt. But AP he's solid. He plays in a really soft division. I'm not worried about him. I don't think he's going to be even as good as he was last year. But he's still in the top 5 RBs in the GFO. I'm not concerned.
Toilet Town. Jamal Charles had a good day, more or less because of that long run. But the thing is him and Thomas Jones were splitting carries pretty evenly.
Well, Jamal Charles only has to touch the ball once to get you an 80-yard touchdown and 16 fantasy points. That's the beauty of having Jamal Charles.
Yep.
It's not in quantity, it's in quality.
Why does Todd Haley hate Jamal Charles?
I don't understand that. I just don't understand why he doesn't touch the ball 20, 25 times unless he's fragile. That might be something because he's not a big guy. Thomas Jones is a big guy in comparison to Jamal Charles. So maybe it's a body build issue.
Are you nervous about Aaron Rodgers for the Toilet Town?
Absolutely not. Aaron Rodgers is going to be one of the best QBs in the GFO, if not the best QB in the GFO.
All right. We move to the Doughboy and New Guy game. New Guy was able to get a win here, really riding the coattails of Matt Forte. Is he for real or is he a fluke?
He's an 8 to 10 guy, maybe a 12-point guy. Let's remember they're playing the Loins, and they love to give up the big play, and they can't tackle. So him and Cutler both, you can take their points and cut them in basically 70%. You're left with the 30%.
Okay. And really with the Doughboy, you had Flacco and Rice. You're playing against the Jets. Very tough matchups. But one positive that the Doughboy can walk away with is Roddy White had 20-plus targets that day.
Oh, man. He is targeted.
If he gets targeted like that, I mean, you're always going to get plays and you're always going to get yardage.
Definitely.
One big question about the Doughboy, though, is he played the Colts D against Houston. Houston has a good offense last time I checked.
Yeah.
And the Colts have never been known for having a good defense.
No.
So my question to you is, why does he have the Colts defense in the first place? But also, why is their Colts defense still on his roster?
Doug, there's just some things that old people do that don't make sense to the rest of the living world. And playing the Colts, even having the Colts on your team is one of those. Having the Colts get beat down and not replacing them is just something that only old people can explain about old people. I have no idea.
Well, that's it for the review. After a commercial break from Thomas Auto Collision, we'll be back with the previews for next week.